All right, beautiful humans, welcome back to another episode of Naked Sunday. I'm your host, Caleb Nelson, and I just have a special treat for you. Mills Bender is on the podcast today with me. She's amazing, stupendous, vibrant. Like, we were talking for like a half hour before this, just shooting the shit, having a good old time. Yep. I was like, oh man, we probably should get to the podcast at some point. Like, this might need to happen. Mills, I'm so happy to welcome you to the show today. Thanks for being a guest.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this for quite a few weeks now. I know it's been long overdue, but oh man, so incredibly thrilled to be here today. Thank you.
It's my pleasure to welcome you on. I like to just tell my guests why I appreciate them. And I do this namely because I think this is my small way, I think, of us moving in the direction of, like, dare I say, that thing called world peace. I think we need to start telling each other why we love each other. I don't know why. I think
yeah.
Let's just start with that. And yeah, we've talked 2 or 3 times now, and you just like are booming with energy through the screen, but you have this immense positivity. There's not an ounce of like holding back like who you are. And I just crave authenticity in my life. You're not guessing where you stand on something. You're just very altruistic. I know you're very good at what you do. And I think that's no secret that from being authentic and being real and being a true person of who you are, it allows you the space to grow and become better at what you do from a practical sense. And I know your people that you serve are certainly the beneficiaries of that high quality human that you are. But I just really appreciate your authenticity and being like, I mean, I think you connected me like 4 or 5 people, and I tried to connect you. Like, there was just that understanding of like giving and serving others and helping others is always a great long-term thing. And like, it's so super genuine. So thank you for just being that.
Thank you. And can I turn it back around and say what I love about you?
I mean, you can do whatever you want. This is Naked Sunday. We could just live our best life.
Let's do it. So honestly, from the moment Ben actually introduced us, number one, anybody who Ben introduced me to, I knew it was going to be fabulous, but I mean, you far exceeded any expectations I had. From the minute we hopped on our first conversation, I felt instantly connected and welcomed by you. Your energy just booms through the Zoom as well. And I'm really excited to maybe meet you in person one day, hopefully soon. But I think you just have a natural light around you, and you naturally attract people who are wanting to do good in the world. And it just, you push that out, you push the good out into the world. And I think you make it a better place. So thank you for being you and for what you do all the time.
You are going to try to get me to cry, and it's
absolutely
3 minutes into a podcast right now.
Get the tissues.
Not that I'm going to hold back. Usually I make a joke about my fake and bake, but this is like my actual tan this time from being in the real sun is covering up some of my blushing right now. I'm blushing big time. So you're too cute. That means a great deal. Side note to these types of things. I don't know why I feel the need to share this, but for a long time, I did not realize how powerful words of affirmations from a love language perspective was for me. I felt very guilty receiving that. And last year, I realized that that was a great season of learning how to accept that, verbal compliments and things of that nature. So I really appreciate that. That was a big deal for me, just like be able to learn how to receive. I'm moving into a new phase. I'm like starting to unwind other things around guilt of like receiving in other fashions from like gifts and what's not. But like I'm fascinated by words or by like love languages in general. And I know you had mentioned about like you've had some interesting journeys. How much have you explored love languages? I know I have zero plan, by the way, where we're going with this conversation. So
no, that's okay. That's okay.
It just piqued my curiosity off the rip.
So I have the book. I've never actually read it, but let's be honest.
It was more the title that counted.
Right. Throughout my various journeys through therapy and self-exploration and all that, I've identified that how I like to receive love is very different from how I like to show and give love. So for me, I have always wanted physical touch as one of my first love languages, just because to me, I feel like it's a tangible way that somebody can show that they care. However, I've also felt really awkward with physical touch, except for a handful of people throughout my life. And I'm slowly getting there, kind of how you feel awkward accepting words of affirmation. Physical touch for me was very awkward for quite a few years, although I craved it. And so I kind of had this disconnect of what I truly wanted versus what my body felt comfortable with. I feel like words of affirmation are great too. I would say that's probably a close second. And then third for me would be quality time. When somebody says, I will spend my time with you, that is so incredibly valuable to me, because there's a limit on how much we all have, So to me, that really shows me that somebody cares. For giving love, I actually love doing acts of service. I will go above and beyond to do something for somebody. I will, go out of my way to make my husband dinner or lunch when he's busy all day on work calls and things like that. I feel like it's the little things that I can do. And then I also love giving gifts. If I see, I'm not very good at the whole, like, let's add a card to the gift thing. I'm more like hey, this reminded me of you. Let me just give it to you. And they'll often say, who is this from? Because I don't even remember to put my name on it or anything. But, it's just, I kind of own it. If I see something that reminds me of you, I will get it. If it's a book or a blanket or a candle, I feel like it's those little thoughts that also add up. But yeah, that's kind of me. I like words of affirmation, not really good at giving it to other people, at least written. I'll verbalize it all day long, but writing it down, it's just, I don't know. Not that I don't want to, it just, I feel like the gift itself is, like the thought itself is kind of implied. I don't know.
I think there's something really, what I love, especially once you start to kind of like all understand, like we're not one or the other. There's a lot of layers in it. I tell my wife this now. I'm like, I realized like I'm very hard to give gifts to, because like, I like a lot of things wound into one. So like me giving a gift to somebody is also an act of service, because I'll be thinking. Yes. People don't know. I don't think people understand how crazy I actually am. I'm thinking about people constantly. I've shared this a few times. I'll share this with you. Maybe I have told you already, but like every night before I can fall asleep, I have to go through the entire Rolodex of people in my head that I think like at that moment I have some meaningful influence over, especially if they have problems going on. And then I have to solve the problem in my head for all of them before I can fall asleep every night, all the time.
Do you write it down?
No, God, no. Who does that? That's too much work.
God forbid. Oh yeah, but going through it and thinking of it's not too much
I know.
work.
I should probably consider that in some way, shape, or form. Probably should take my own advice for a lot of things on that one. I was that stubborn kid, so I know we're going to talk about like, money and stuff like that, like what you do later on in this, but like I hated showing my work in math. Like I could just like solve problems, and I love logic problems, and I could just do it in my head. It's like, don't make me show the stuff on paper. Got it. You told me with your script and your ways of doing it. I happened to figure it out, and I just jumped a few steps.
Exactly.
I understand if I got the question wrong, I got it wrong. That's kind of the punchline, no matter what in life. So that was kind of the thing. So I've come to a place where like when I give somebody something, it's also got me into trouble, because I try to make it massive. It has to like be all the meaning and all the stuff wrapped in one, where it's like, they told me later on, like, bro, you could have just sent that in a text and I would have been fine. And I'm like, thanks. I wish you told
just
me.
Accept it.
Take my love, damn it. So I can see where like in other times, like if somebody gives me a gift, it's usually like, you need to think deeply about my problem. And like, it's usually like the one thing that gets me over the hump. But I love hearing about how people wrap their head around that whole thing. And I think there's an interesting thing, or I mean, maybe this is me, so I should not speak for everybody. I'm noticing a lot of people, at least initially, feel guilt first learning how to accept the love that they actually want. Maybe it's like like for me, and I'm saying a lot of people I've seen, and maybe that's me projecting my own thing because I felt that way. But I think that's something around that. Like, why do we feel bad about allowing ourselves to feel good? What? That's crazy.
Yeah. I don't really know. I feel like I align with that too, though, and more so in terms of being able to accept how I evolve in different areas of my life. I used to hate receiving gifts. It just like wasn't me. Like, I would rather you take me on a trip, which I still am like that. But I also have now started to realize, like, maybe I do like a gift. Maybe I like unwrapping the paper, like whatever it may be, and being okay with accepting that change in my life too, and I think, I don't know if I have an answer as to why we struggle with accepting love, but maybe because it's just we're not told that it's okay. I don't know.
Like a shame thing behind it.
Yeah, or like a guilt thing. If we're maybe, okay, I'll take my work, for example, something that I've struggled with since being an entrepreneur, and I've really improved upon, but Lord knows I need to keep improving upon it. If I want to take a day or a week, or a couple days off during the middle of the week for whatever reason, right? Historically, I've always felt like I need to work myself to death in order to justify taking that time off. And as we're talking about this, I feel like I've always had to justify the love I'm being given, right? Like, maybe I'm not doing enough, and it never will be enough, right? But that's kind of the point of unconditional love. Like, you can't earn it, So maybe we feel shamed or guilted because there's nothing we can do to really earn it. And I feel like in our hectic work lifestyle, we're kind of ingrained to have to earn things like that,
I can agree with that. And I think there's also I'm sure you've deal with a lot of people, especially in the financial world, about like scarcity mindset of like, there's not enough love to go around.
Right.
And if I take this, or maybe like, and oftentimes with that, it comes with like, I love that you use the word unconditional love. When somebody can give from that place, they really do mean it. But I think a lot of people, perhaps it's maybe our experiences, we receive a lot of conditional love from people. There's an expectation, there's a back end, but it was never communicated. Perhaps it was fronted as unconditional, but then the second things get a little sketchy, I'm going to rip that out from underneath you. I'm going to hold that against you and be like, well, fuck that. I never want to feel that way again. Or because like you're giving out of obligation.
Yeah. Maybe we're second guessing it when it is unconditional. And therefore we're just on our guard. And so we don't want to fully accept it because we're afraid if we do, what will happen as a result.
This is the most fire start to a podcast. I knew this was gonna be good.
You started it.
I guess technically I had to intro the damn thing, but like I haven't even allowed you to introduce yourself. Like we've talked, you've barely broke in like some stuff. We just hi, this is me. How about this? Let's we've gotten a little bit to where we're at. A little bit. Tell us, Mills, who are you?
Well, where should I start? Because I feel like I want to jump right into my normal like business intro, but I feel like that's just not the space we're in. Yeah. Who am I? I am one of 6 kids, come from a large Italian family. If you've ever seen my big fat Greek wedding, that's my family, except Italian and pasta. So that's us. I have 10 nieces and nephews. I've been married for 4.5 years. We have a little nugget on the way. So we're growing. In terms of who I am as a person, I am nerdy and geeky. I love books. I love Marvel Cinematic Universe. I love amusement parks, Jurassic Park, all of that fun stuff. Slightly obsessive nature. So when I find something I love, I'll pour myself into it almost to the point of becoming sick of it. That's just who I am. But it works really well. I can focus on things. It's made me a better business owner and better at what I do. I love helping people. I've always loved helping people and empowering them through education. And you can see that in what I do with my life now. I'm a sorry.
And you're also a loving dog owner.
I'm a loving dog owner. Yes, I have one dog. His name is Bear. He thinks he's more ferocious than he actually is. He's a teddy bear. But I'm a financial coach now. I empower others through financial education, specifically other variable income earners that are either 1099 or self-employed, and they just don't know how to make the most of their money. So I get to geek out. I get to leverage my slightly neurotic nature of being able to hone in and focus on end results and get those results for people. But I also get to hold space for them, empower them through that education. And really, I get to encapsulate who I am and be truly who I am with my clients, which is really cool. I mean, I get to geek out and get paid for it. I mean, come on, there's nothing better.
You're gonna get along so well with my wife, especially when we talk about the Marvel universe and all that. Oh my God, she loves all those Avenger movies, all of it, all the time. Yes. You're gonna be.
And anytime a new movie's come out, I've had to rewatch the whole thing in order of plot. Every time.
You need the refresher. You know what?
It's dedication.
I used to hate actually rewatching movies. Very recently have I started to like accept that. Like we watch, and this is not a movie, it's a show, but we watch Big Bang Theory basically every night. Every night. I can recite pretty much every episode basically without watching the show at the same time. And I've come to a place where I'm actually appreciating it because of how many things I thought that I knew. Like, oh, I got the general premise, but there's a lot of little nuance that you just don't get. Like, even the show like Big Bang Theory, like I have these existential conversations with myself about relationships because the whole movie's about relationships, or the whole show is about relationships. But when you see something like Marvel Universe, there, if you can start to like pass like the lasers and the crazy shit, like all the stuff, the flying around and all that, and I mean, some marvelous, pun intended, stuff. Like there is actually some very deeper conversations that are in that subplot if you really like search into that context. So I can get behind that.
Yeah. And the whole creativity behind the foreshadowing and the connotation of certain words that people say. I mean, there's so many different ways that you can get a point across, but they specifically wanted to use that phrase for that situation. So for me, rewatching it, number one, is not only comforting, but number two, I do pick up on so much more, and I just find more and more pieces that I love about it because it's other people's creativity. I mean, it amazes me how creative people can be to think that in depth about things, because normally I'd be like, yeah, just get right to the point. Like, just tell them what they're supposed to know, but I think it's really cool being able to pick up on those nuances, like you said.
I appreciate you brought that up, the foreshadowing piece and just the artistry within that. I'm going to knock myself right now because back in high school, I took a film and lit class. And
okay.
Miss Bayer, if you're listening right now, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I was a real asshole for the way I was like, I think there's that like brash dude, masculine, like I don't want to seem artsy fartsy, whatever. And like there was a movie, I can't remember what we were doing an analysis on. And then there was like blinds that were casting a shadow over them, and she's like, yeah, so we're gonna stop here, and this is symbolizing this person feels caged and trapped. And I was like, this motherfucker is thinking way too deeply into this, like chill out. And then now I see it in all these other movies and I go, oh my God. And now I appreciate it because like that was that one form of art. And I happen to love
Mm-hmm.
movies. Like I love
Mm-hmm.
the cinematic adventure, shall we say. Clearly, as do you. And there is a lot of comfort in that. But
Yeah.
also, one other thing that I love bringing about what we're talking about is like when you rewatch it again, it's not that it's a different movie, it's that you're a different person and you're
Yes.
arriving with a new skill set. You're going
Yes.
to receive that information differently. You're about to have a kid. Like you're going to watch those movies again. It's going to mean something completely different to you.
Right. Right. And not to mention, okay, and some people are probably going to get mad at this statement, and that's okay.
It's okay.
It's the same thing with books. If it's not a self-help or motivational book or anything like that, if it's something just for fun, I'm that type of person who, even the first time picking up a book, will read the first chapter, the last chapter, go back to the second and read it all the way through from there. And it's not because I'm impatient, because a lot of people will be like, you're ruining the ending. But to me, it's not about the ending of a movie or an ending of a book. I like seeing how things unfold. I like understanding when I've rewatched a movie what the end result is going to be. But then when I rewatch it, seeing how all those little things actually added up and made sense, and I just didn't catch them before. And then when you're reading a book, it's knowing the end result and even reading it for the first time. To me, that's just so much more beautiful, and how the author unfolds the storyline and brings you to that conclusion than the conclusion itself. But yeah, some people think I'm a psychopath for that. It's fine. I'll take ownership of it. It's okay.
No, you know what's actually funny about that? It's funny how upset people get about spoilers for movies and shows and all that other stuff. Yet in the real world, when it's all about like, I'm going to make big, rash, crazy decisions about my life, or I'm going to go on this health journey, or I'm going to go on this financial journey, or I'm going to go on this relational journey, we want to know how it ends up right away.
Right.
And apparently we're not okay with that. Like, like if anything, you're consistent. Like, I want to know how it ends up, and I'm going backwards to see like, this is the steps to get there. Got it. Oh,
Got it.
Actually, perhaps they're the crazy ones. You might be
Maybe.
more in line. Like,
I mean, it's also the only place where we can know for certain how something ends. You know, in our lives, we're kind of, everything we do is a crapshoot. But, you know, yeah, there's no pressure with learning about the spoilers in a book or a movie. But to me, I feel like it's the one place we do get to know the ending. Why not see how it unfolds? You know? And yeah, some people say it spoils it for you, but I mean, I won't share the ending with you. You go for it. You do whatever you want to do.
Well, I guess let's consider this then, like the first ending, the ending of this chapter. How did we get here? Take us back to, I guess, the second chapter, because you were born, that whole bit happened. Like,
yeah.
How do we get here? What are the steps to where Mills is at in life now?
Okay. All right. So being part of a huge family, on the personal side, there's this underlying message of competition for attention. So I definitely felt that growing up. I felt like I always needed to rise above and beyond in everything that I did. And I still have that feeling sometimes. I feel like it's ingrained in me to an extent.
Preach.
Preach. So in high school, I always felt like, I needed to just give everything my all, even if that meant costing my own sanity or physical health, right? So when I went to college, I kind of had that same perspective, and I chose the university I did. I grew up in Miami. I went to University of Central Florida in Orlando for a few reasons. Number one, it's far enough away from home for me to get a little bit of independence, but close enough to where I could have that support system if needed. But I didn't want to have to rely on it, right? I felt like this was my opportunity to kind of start fresh. And with that independence, about 6 weeks into my freshman year, this kind of started my trajectory with what I'm doing now. I checked my bank account and I had $1.50 to my name. And with wanting to remain like high priority of like good kid and wanting that independence personally. And also, let's be honest, some guilt and shame and embarrassment. I didn't tell my parents about it. I didn't tell anybody really about it. I kind of sat with it and I thought, I need to figure this out for myself. But yes, there were elements of like the pride and the ego there, but it was also because I wanted to figure it out. I was at this point where I started asking myself questions like, how did I get here? How can I make sure it doesn't happen again? But then I started asking myself other questions like, how do I open a credit card or build credit? What's escrow? I've heard of this thing. I don't know what it is. You know, how do I build a resume? How do I anything with life and money and finances? And so taking my neurotic personality and wanting to dive right in, I sat with the negative feeling for about another semester. And then I decided to do something about it. And I poured myself entirely into learning finance and personal finance. I had 4 different internships in college, mainly because I just wanted to learn about money in a lot of different perspectives, not so I could get a better job, but honestly, just because I wanted to know it. It was kind of like my way of seeing how the story unfolded, right? If commercial real estate deals with money in this way and financial advising deals with it in this way, where are the overlaps? Where are the differences? How can I merge everything together? So then I forgot where I was going with that tangent, but that's okay.
It's all good. It's
That's
free
okay.
flowing.
Yeah. But I worked on myself in college. I had my first therapist and was working through my stuff. And all along the way, I was trying to approach my personal growth in a lot of different ways. I really dived into weightlifting more and taking care of not only my mental health, but my physical health, my financial health. And I started to find my groove and found that things that I normally used to hate about myself, like being obsessive about things, actually were in my benefit. And they made me who I am. And being nerdy was okay because I get to enjoy it. And why do I have to hate something that I enjoy? So that's kind of how the story started unfolding.
It's always fun to hear how people can like use their greatest failure as the like in the moment. Sometimes it's hard to see where it's going to take you and be like, I sucked at this, but then I'm going to start teaching it. Like what? Like,
it was not that quick.
Not that quick, of course, right? It takes time.
Yeah.
But I really admire that, especially from like an obsession standpoint. It's like, well, you really wanted to understand it. I think a lot of people just like coast through school, like, people are nerdy and this and that. Was like, that was the thought that was going around. Why did I ever think about anything? But like, why do people care so much about certain things? And I was like, well, they care because they're trying to. If you actually now you look at them like, wow, you're inspired by something. Wow, that's really what is inspiring this? Where's this coming? What's being fueled? Obviously, you sharing a very intimate moment of like, hey, there's $150 in my account. I got to figure this thing out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and money. There's so much shame and guilt universally wrapped up. I'm sure you see this like to no avail. Like it got to be a crazy thing, which I also find really unique. And I think like right now we're in an interesting place in history where we're I think women, I have a firm belief actually women are going to run most businesses. I don't know. I do actually know why. Women are far more organized than men by and large. And that's why, like and with that also empathy comes more naturally. So
I would also say, speaking from my perspective too, I feel like I have more to prove. I feel like I have to push myself a little bit further to, I don't want to say deserve my seat at the table because I now know I deserve my seat at the table, but make sure that I have a voice at that table too. And business is, depending on where you network and who you talk to, can be predominantly male. And at first that can be really intimidating. At least it was intimidating for me. And now I feel like I've really taken ownership of that. I've used that anxiety as adrenaline, but yes, we're really organized most of the time. We mostly have more empathy, but also I feel like there's a little bit more of that fire lit underneath us, because I feel like we have to do more to receive that acceptance with it as well. Not to mention, I'm going to slight little sidebar. Do you watch Shark Tank at all?
Yeah, duh.
Okay, 10 out of 10 obsessed over here. All right, I've seen every episode. Kevin O'Leary, aka Mr. Wonderful, when I was living in Tampa a few years ago, was doing a segment in Bradenton, which was about an hour and a half from where I was living. Bet your bottoms, I drove over there to see his segment, okay? During his presentation, he was saying, if you watch Shark Tank episodes, and this was maybe around season 7 or season 8, he said, if you watch any episodes now, and if you see, a male entrepreneur versus a female entrepreneur, he goes, I'm more likely to invest in women-led businesses than men-led businesses, because historically in my portfolio, they have done far better. And I thought that was really interesting. And at the time, Mills Knows Bills my business wasn't even at the forethought of my mind. But I thought, that's really interesting. And that was something that kind of gave me the little inkling to maybe do something. But anyway,
well,
it's funny that you say women businesses.
I want to share a perspective around that. I think a lot about this. I think not enough people understand sociology on top of this. And I look at sociology as like psychology at mass scale.
Okay.
So I don't know how much you've looked at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I stare at it almost daily and just sit and think about it.
Okay.
Societally, so there's,
love it.
I'm a crazy person. Societally, I would say we're moving into like globally a self-actualization stage. Look at whatever.
I would agree with that.
The entire conversation is around who am I, identity. Like we have enough like connection. We solve the love, esteem, connection, surface level. Below the self-actualization, and the real one is actually 8 levels high, not 5 levels high, but I won't even go there. There's a turning point. So below that's a whole nother bit. Like if you want to get into spirituality, that's a whole deep conversation. The bottom is more of a survival mentality. It's don't die, don't die, don't die, don't die, don't die. Self-actualization is to flip the thing, and it's more thriving.
Yeah.
By and large, if we think about what the male female paradigm is in like societies, it was men are the hunters, they go out and they kill, they go wander off, it's about getting things, like go do that. And then women would like stabilize the society. It's like food, like cook, clean, think of traditional roles, but that is organizational, and that's stability, and that's sustainability. Like I think that's not what we're not thinking about. And if you think from a communication standpoint of creating a safe space for long-term prosperity, to like, do you need that masculine energy in the beginning? Yeah, because if you don't bring anything home, you don't chop down the wood, or you don't kill the deer or whatever, you don't have food and you don't have fire. Like you don't even have the chance to be able to create anything sustainable. You need to bring in enough resources. So initially that very strong masculine thing. Where I think it's shifting now, and here's the other side of that coin, why I think most businesses are going to be run by women. That's the first coin. The flip side to this is I think there's going to be a strong shift of stay-at-home dads. Massive shift.
Okay.
The reason is that so many men left that like dynamic where they were part of raising the children. Like, well, you take the boys out and we're going to teach you how to hunt. They'd have that very close father-son relationship. That was stripped for a long time because the Industrial Revolution. And then think about a lot of like, what does it mean to be a man? There's a lot of that questioning right now. Like, how do I be a good person? How do I have, like, we still need to appreciate quote unquote masculine energies of like discipline, structure. Like there's value because you can channel that. And I think like that blend of the feminine, like love and softness with like the organizational piece is what makes a very empowered woman. And then on the same side, a man who knows how to be like, I can understand my emotions. I know how to feel and how to use certain things, like when to use anger, when to use like how to appropriately do those things. So I think we're at a very unique time in history.
I would agree with that.
Which also lends me to a very unique thing of why I think you're good at what you do is like, by and large, you have an appreciation and understanding of like a very masculine energy type of thing. Money, spreadsheets, mind you, you show me a spreadsheet, I want to put my head through a wall. Like that's, I'm so in touch with my like feels and my feminine side. Like I am the exact opposite.
So the spreadsheet I showed you earlier was just not good. Good.
There was some color coding, and that's about all I saw. I saw blocks of feelings, and that was it. Like, here's a yoga spot. Listen, I made a spreadsheet so stupid simple. I've had to make things so stupid simple, literally color code it and like so I could understand it and digest it. Because my second business partner, he would show me spreadsheets and numbers, and I was like, cool, so what are we doing again? Like, tell me, just give me the punchline. We learned that. So I think what I'm admiring about you is like, it's again this marrying of like, how do we make money? And I look at some of your marketing stuff, like it's playful, it's fun, it's soft, it's not intimidating, it's warm, it's welcoming. And what that really avails, what traditionally is a demographic that doesn't have like as much as experience or like exposure because of you know, whatever societal pressures, I think that's what makes it really palatable. It makes it less intimidating. And you shared something really important about, you said like, I moved away from home, it was far enough that I could still come home if I needed to. Like my threshold of safety, I tested that boundary. Similar thing I'm seeing you do with the business you're creating, like, and just from an innate skill set, I think that's really, really cool. Because I'm going to go on a limb and say a majority of your demographic is female. Like I'm just going to throw some darts at a board and just hope I hit. But like, even beyond that, like, think about like moms make great games for kids and stuff like that. Why? Because they like think about, how's this kid gonna receive this? It's fun, it's cutesy, it's I think it's genius. So I went on a long tangent there, and I didn't really have a point or anything. I just wanted to share my thoughts on it, and I think it's really cool. But I think what you're doing is so valuable.
Thank you. And it's interesting hearing you tie a couple things that I've said together, because I never thought of it that way. But yeah, I mean, I don't particularly see myself as an intimidating person. I mean, anybody who knows me knows I'm just a goofball, but I just love spreadsheets. I mean, anything I can put on an Excel spreadsheet, I will. Because it's just organized. I don't know. I like it. But yeah, I see that. Because you're right. I mean, running a business, and all of my clients are 1099 or self-employed. They do need to have that masculine energy of going out and actually sourcing that business. But the feminine energy comes from, well, why am I sourcing that amount? What do I want to do with this? How is this going to impact my life? And being able to marry the two together allows people to make their financial education sustainable. So it's not just wearing them out, or it's not doing enough for their future, right? You have to have that happy balance of giving yourself enough energy today, but making sure you're setting aside enough for the future. So you're right. Like, you do need to have that good mix. And that's why I do attract a lot of female clients. But I will say I've been surprised with the number of men I've worked with too. But they're willing to kind of work on both sides, you know.
Give me a typical person who walks through the door. Like, what are they struggling with? Like, why? Like, where's the big disconnect for them?
Yeah. So working with variable income earners, my threshold that I'll normally work with is somebody who's generating at least $100,000 in revenue. There are some caveats to that, depends on their debt to income ratio. And that's where the numbers and the facts come in. But really where they're struggling is, yeah, I'm making this money, but I have nothing to show for it. Where did it all go? Or they just have this internal feeling of always needing to make more, but it's never enough. Maybe they feel like they're just not doing something right. They're stretched for time, which means they don't have the capacity to earn more revenue. So yes, it's a lot of the numbers that I deal with, but I translate those feelings and their proposed lifestyle into a number, because it's easy to track. It's an easy metric that's factual. So what I'll normally do is identify where somebody is financially. We talk about where they want to be, and then we bridge that gap with a financial and business strategy that aligns with their personality. So what they're not saying, I need to generate 200K a year to have the lifestyle I want. Depending on their business, it could be, I need to prospect 200 people a month and close 2 of them at minimum, right? So it's a lot easier for them to focus on what it is they're good at, which is their craft, their business, and then everything else will fall into place from there. Really, to answer your question more with finite responses, normally the clients that I'm working with are struggling with living paycheck to paycheck or sale to sale. They're struggling with debt because of the cyclicality of their income. And because of that as well, they're not able to reach their financial goals. They're struggling with being able to buy a house or save for retirement or have money in savings or take the vacations that they want, not just because they can't afford it, but because they feel like they can't afford the time either. So that's what I do.
Affording the time. Time keeps coming up lately, so that's the reason I'm pausing on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so many people are just trading their time for money and not thinking about like the bigger picture of like, I think there's an attraction as to like why you're a business owner or 1099 or something, or say, I'll even go so far to say like in a sales position, because that's that can like your commission based often, or at least like base plus commission. But so many people get caught up in that trap, but like, it's almost like this strange place of like, I have too much freedom in all of that. And like, it sounds like where you're stepping in is like, I mean, taking that freedom and giving it a structure that is contextually appropriate to your persona, to the way you think. And of course, goal-based is always like, well, what are we doing with it at the end of it? It's like, it's always an important place to be.
Yeah. And I will say, I work with a lot of service-based variable income earners, coaches, hairstylists, makeup artists, graphic designers, a lot of people who their time is money, right? And what we try to do, it's one thing to create the financial plan, right? But when we're translating that, we need to see if there's a disconnect between what they're charging versus what they should be charging, given the amount of time that they do want to be dedicating to their business. So you're not just budgeting your money, you need to also budget your time. Every year between December 15th to December 31st, I look at the next year and I will in advance block off days, random or not random. And I say, I'm not working that day. Why? Because I don't want to. I don't want to. I need to give myself some time to recuperate. Normally on those days, I'll do things like take a bath, read a book, take my dog to the dog park. If it's closer to my birthday, I'll go get a facial or a massage or whatever. But it's my opportunity to just not work that day. And I've had some clients say, well, don't you get any questions about it from people that are wanting to network with you or have a session with you? I say, no. They say, hey, are you available this day? I say, no, I'm not. The question, it stops right there. People don't really care. You need to care enough about you to block that time off. So once we've figured out what their time is worth based off of the lifestyle they want to have and the amount of time they want to be working, we budget their money, but we also encourage them to go in and budget their time accordingly as well.
It seems so foreign to people from like working backwards, which is again the irony of everything we said before of like people want to know how it's going to work out, but you're not willing to go to the end and be like, sit there. Do you see, well, I guess let me change that. What do you see people struggle with when you do ask them what they want?
I'd say the most common is feeling like they have to justify what they want. So for example, retirement. One of the things that I talk about with my clients is the fact that retirement is not necessarily an age, but a dollar amount. Specifically, it's your financial independence number, when you can become financially independent from working. Not that any of us out here being self-employed are ever going to stop working. Let's be honest. We love what we do, but it's being able to have that option. And I say that because I'll ask my clients, how much do you want each month in terms of income in your version of retirement? Well, I feel like, like $5,000. I didn't ask you what you think you should have. I asked you what you want to have, right? I mean, like maybe 10,000 or 12,000. I don't want you to think about how you're going to get there. Tell me what you want. Tell me what you want. And they feel like sometimes it's either unattainable what they want, or they feel guilty about wanting that, or they feel like they have to have some type of grand reason why they want the dollar amount that they want, right? Like there's always some type of justification. And they often struggle with being able to own up and say, no, I want that dollar amount. My husband and I, we want $20 million in retirement. Why? Because we don't want to have to worry about anything. We want to travel all the time. We want to leave our kids with something. Is that a justification? No. It's saying 20 million is an asinine amount of number for us, but it's our goal. It's our goal. So that's what we're working towards. So working with my clients, I find that they struggle with taking ownership of what they want and then letting me figure out how they can get there. And it takes a little bit of pulling and conversation, but eventually they do get to that point. But it saddens me sometimes when I see people who struggle financially because they feel like they don't deserve to generate $500,000 a year in revenue, or they don't deserve to have a comfortable retirement, or they don't deserve to take their dream vacation to the Maldives, whatever it may be,
Yeah. I have I don't know where I'm going to go with this, but I have like this thought came up with what you're saying that around this guilt. And I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on it.
Okay.
I think if we bring it back to this masculine, feminine energy kind of thing, I think a lot of times, let's think traditional. The guy was working, had to afford the stuff. And like, I think most men typically are like, I could get by. If I think about the typical bachelor pad, it's like the TV on the floor and like a box of Cheetos and like, whatever, like in the corner.
A lawn chair, not even a couch.
Right. Like men tend to be minimalist by nature. Right. And, as I say all this, like I joke all the time, like it's my wife's home. I happen to be living in it. And it's like, she controls the space. So then like, there's this weird expectation of like, the disconnect between like, am I allowed to feel comfortable? Am I allowed to, like, I know myself, like sometimes like, am I allowed to have this nice soft chair underneath my butt? And like, am I allowed to relax? But what if I relax? I'm going to take my foot off the gas pedal and like, things are going to blow up and then blah, 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 blah. Same problem. Like, what if you took a rest day? What if you just chilled out? Like, so I think there's an interesting conversation to be had in between that. Maybe we'll call it traditional roles just for these, most people to think about it, like the husband and wife dynamic of like, wife might want the bigger thing, but the husband doesn't want that. The husband might, I think there's two sides of guilt. I want this. I don't know how to say that I want that. And like, is that okay? And then the other side is like, she wants that. I need to convince us that this is all we need. Like, don't turn the thermostat over 65 because, put a sweater on, like, don't waste the heat. But like, also the other side of it is, how do I live up to that expectation? Like there's this weird conversation somewhere in there about like, how do I say this and support them on this journey to get there and say like, well, hey, what do you need? Is it different? And I think a lot of times, obviously I talk a lot about relationships and I'm sure you have to grapple with plenty of that because if it's a household, it's going to affect both people. It's not just one or the other. I think there's an interesting conversation there, not knowing how to say like, hey, and I don't think it's a bad on either side. It's like, I think there's a lot of times of disconnect around like, I don't want to hurt the other's feelings. I don't want to like let her down. and I don't want to make him feel bad. And it's
Mm-hmm.
both sides. I was actually talking like a week or two ago, and I was like, you guys are both saying you give a shit about each other, but you're like either imploding or exploding, but you're both like
Yeah.
hurting on the inside. You're just reacting to each other.
Yeah.
I think that might like, and that's where I see somebody like yourself being such a great intermediary, just learning how to have a conversation about like, how do we make money not
Yeah.
intimidating, so that, especially if let's say stick with the gender role thing, like that's traditional.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, she understands what it takes to bring the money in. Like, well, what if there's a new conversation? Like, hey, we're bringing in more resources in a different way. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
what if that changes the stress on one level? Now it opens the mind to saying like, hey, well,
Mm.
we can, this is, I think it's like we all feel like it's all on one person. We got to shoulder the whole burden, like me against the world. I'm a lone wolf. Let me use like 94 other
Yeah.
different kind of like analogies to say, as opposed to like, guys, you're a team. How do you
Right.
get there together? I think
Right.
and money clearly gets things messy at times.
Well, no one really knows how to talk about money.
Yeah.
It's taboo, and we're not supposed to talk about it, but we need to talk about it. But where do we start without sparking an argument and all those things? And there's a few things that I'll say. First, I once had somebody tell me, you don't have to believe everything you think.
Mhm.
Right? So think about that. We are so quick to just accept our first thought, whether it's financial, mental health, physical health, relationships, whatever it may be. We are so quick to just accept the first thing that comes to the top of our mind. We don't challenge it. So when it comes to approaching these financial conversations, either with yourself or a spouse or somebody else in your life, whatever that first thought that comes up when somebody shares something about their financial journey, challenge that first thought, right? That person 9 out of 10 times is not coming from a space of wanting to start an argument either. They aren't. It just takes that one person to say, well, why do you think that way? Maybe gather some more information before you give a response. The other thing I would say is when you're having a financial conversation with somebody else or yourself, and you're looking at your numbers and you need to prioritize how you're spending or saving, we're also very quick to say the first thought in our mind is, well, I can't afford that right now. I can't afford it. When in reality, it's not that you can't afford it. If you wanted to take your entire paycheck and just blow it on dining out, you can do that. But you have other priorities in your life: putting a roof over your head, clothes on your back, gas in your car, paying your car, right? All those different things. So when you really look at it, it's not that you, again, 9 out of 10 times, it's not that you can't afford something, it's that it's not your priority at this point in time. So whether you're looking at your finances alone or with somebody else, don't say that you can't afford it. Say, how can I get to a place of being able to afford it? How can I get that to be a priority for me within the next 6 months or so? And then lastly, being able to open up that conversation almost emotionless, starting it off, easing into it, being objective about the conversation is really helpful as well. That's actually how I start every single one of my coaching programs. We go through a money mindset guide that I've created, which Caleb, I'll share with you. You can put in the show notes for anybody who wants to access it. But there's really 4 key categories that you go through. The first one is you talk about yourself. And if you're talking with somebody else, have them talk about themselves. Answer the questions on your own, but then go back and talk to each other about your responses. Why? People love talking about themselves. It opens up the conversation already being in a positive light, like, oh, they want to know what I enjoy doing. They want to know what makes me who I am. It opens up that conversation. And once you then ease out of that, you slowly talk about your past with money. How was money talked about in your household growing up? How does that impact you today? What are your perceptions of money? Are they good, bad, neutral? You talk about it from the past, the present, and then you move into the future. So being able to have a set list of questions to go through opens up that conversation. I encourage you to not respond right away when you're conversing with somebody over their responses. Maybe dive a little bit deeper. Don't believe everything you think of right away. And then set that budget together. Look at your finances together. Say, this is what we have to spend money on because this is important to both of us. But now that we have this leftover money, how are we going to prioritize this? What's important to both of us? How much does this category hold weight? And then you get to prioritize. And if there's something that doesn't get a financial allocation right away, have a conversation together about when you can revisit it. It might be sooner than you think, because a lot of savings goals, once you hit those goals, you can repurpose that money into something else.
That's very eloquent. Clearly, you're good at what you do. I love that.
Thank you.
I think that that's really valuable. And ironically, of course, like, what's the first word we're not talking about the practical, like you're talking about the mind. How are you thinking about the conversation? And the first thing you're going to do when the word money comes up is you're going to freak out. Clearly, you need to address that first. And I think that's really powerful that you even just approach it from that, like, because just because you hand somebody a spreadsheet or like a task list, if you don't know how to like have a conversation about it, it's meaningless. It doesn't translate. And I think that that's God forbid we actually learned how to like talk about money when we were younger. How crazy would that be? Like, what world do we live in now? Like, where prosperity was like everybody could win, like in a practical sense, like, because winning is also what I thought you did a great job of identifying there is like, it's very unique to each person. Some people are going to be like, I only want 500,000 in retirement, or 2 million, 20 million, 100 million. Everybody's threshold of what they want and what their capacity is very, very different. And I think that we're all looking for this cookie cutter utopian society. Is like, that's not a real thing.
It's not a one size fits all.
No, but there's a framework that you follow that I think is really nice to say, like, hey, here's some guidelines. Let's start here, and then let's contextualize it based off what you really, it's going to fit like a glove.
Right.
Imagine that. It's probably going to stick. I don't know.
And that's one thing I would suggest. I mean, my budget might look completely different from yours, and that's fine. But if you're trying to adapt your finances to my ideal budget and lifestyle, it's not going to be sustainable for you. You're going to give up on it very quickly. So it's okay for things to look different. In fact, I encourage them to look different, especially when I work with couples, being able to find that common ground and say, well, this is where your opinion and your opinion shift a little bit. How do we still find the happy balance between the two of those? And it's really letting them talk it out and find that compromise amongst themselves.
Man, you're awesome. You're just awesome.
I just love doing it. It's so fun.
Thank God there's one of you out there, because for me, that again, like, I'm clearly the example of somebody who needs to have somebody else in his corner to help them do that. And I mean, I think that not enough people respect and or appreciate the fact, like, hey, outsourcing people, especially entrepreneurs, because we're talking a lot about that right now. I think that, I mean, how often are you seeing guilt about outsourcing help and being like, that's buying my time back?
Right. And that's, I mean, whether it's for their business or for their personal finances, not every financial decision has to be 100% rational. It doesn't. If it alleviates some of the mental insanity, that's okay. And not every solution has to be permanent. My husband and I, 2 days ago, were talking about how the month of May and June and July, they're just going to be absolute insanity for us. And so I said, hey, why don't we order some meal plan just for 2 to 3 meals a week That way we avoid spending excessive amounts of money on dining out. It alleviates either of us having to cook every single night. And we'll figure out kind of where we stand once things settle down in August. It's not a permanent solution, but a lot of people think it has to be all or nothing. And they think that all or nothing decision has to be permanent. If for you, Caleb, outsourcing your marketing, for example, and maybe it costs you a little bit more money than it would if you were to do it yourself with your time, right? If you knew what your time was worth per hour, but it takes off all of the other stress that comes with it, thinking about it, that's a good investment. It's not necessarily what your time is worth working on something, but also all the other shit that comes up with having to think about it and the anxiety around it. If that alleviates that much effort on your behalf, think of how much more space you're opening up to bring in what you do love to do, which is working with clients.
That's exactly what I did. So I love that you said that because I have done the ticky-tacky, like do it myself. And I am also very streaky when it comes to a lot of things. And the second I get bored is like the second I will find something else to be like, cool, this is the new high yield thing that I think I'm going to focus on. And as we're talking about sustainability, it's saying, well, what for the long term, based off of all my tendencies, do I know about me? Well, I know marketing still needs to happen from like a surface level standpoint, like posts and all that other stuff's got to go out. And I knew I would be great for a month. And then I was burnt out. And then it was, so you're talking about something I don't think enough people think about, the mental and emotional real estate, that's something like that. If it's not like
your zone of genius.
In my zone of genius, there we go. I was looking for that word. Thank you. I appreciate that. Like me walking into a room and just making friends and talking about stuff, that's like breathing. And I'll go find problems. Like, don't get me wrong. Breathing. Could do it, and I don't even realize how good I am at it. People have to tell me. I'm like, okay, cool. The marketing stuff and like all that stuff, good at it, but man, I gotta sit down, I gotta process and all that stuff. But that's somebody else's nirvana. That's also okay. And I think what not enough people as a business owner think about is it's like accepting, while you could be good at it, are you good enough and love it enough to stay consistent? And that's it.
Loving it. It's one thing to be good at it, but do you love it too? And it's funny, whenever people ask me or they find out that I don't do my own bookkeeping, they're like, oh my God, why? But you love like all the finances and stuff. Yeah, I love forecasting. I love planning. I love making the transfers. I love spending the money and investing it and all that stuff. I cannot stand categorizing all of the historical transactions. I can't. To me, it's so mundane. It brings me absolutely no joy. I like to see the reports. I like to see the trends and the trajectory, but actually sitting down and categorizing it so everything is tax ready by the end of the year, hell no. No, thank you. So people always say, but like, you should be good at this. Oh, I'm very good at it. I am. I just get no joy out of it. So as soon as I could afford somebody to handle it for me, that was the first thing I let go. No, thank you. So also being able to identify that just because you should be doing something because it's close to your zone of genius, like who cares? Who cares? If you don't derive joy from it, move on with your life.
I think there's also something that people miss in the interim as well. It's like they think like, I'm saving money, but are you? Like, you could be losing money in the aggregate, because with that new real emotional real estate, doing the thing you love, and who doesn't want to be around somebody who's hyped? Like, yo, we're talking about that thing. I love talking about that thing. That's your problem. Yo, this is my thing. I got you.
Yes, let me help.
That type of inspiration is intoxicating, and people want to buy that. And especially if you have a high ticket offer, which I hope anybody who's listening to this who does like have a high ticket offer, it means you deliver high value. Like, crazy. You could probably make up a bookkeeper in one sale right away. You can maybe even make up your bookkeeping costs in one sale for the year.
For the whole year. Exactly.
Handle it. So I love that you bring that up, because it's that cleaning house to make space for the things that are going to yield more income, more space for prosperity, whatever you want to.
Absolutely.
You're just smart. You're a smart person. All I got to say
I can't
about
take
that.
all the credit. I can't. I've surrounded myself with many, many smart people who are far more successful than I am. And I look at them, I say, I want to be like them when I grow up.
I don't want to go. Oh man, I love that. But I think, any successful person I've ever met, they say almost the exact same thing. They acknowledge like it is a lot about, and it's what we just talked about. It's also allowing other people to help you. Now, sometimes that obviously there's a give and take, as in like, hey, I'm going to pay you for this service or whatever the thing is, but I'm like, in return, I'm buying this mental clarity and I'm unburdening these thoughts. Do we need to check in? Do we know? Yes, but you're buying back your space and your time and your thought, your ability to just think. And as an entrepreneur, especially when you're solving deep problems, and especially if you're going to deal with things of the mind, because that's what you talked about. You're like, mostly I'm dealing with people's mindset. They're pretty smart. They already know how to do stuff. Like that's deep stuff. And holding space for that is not easy. So, it takes a very thoughtful human being like yourself to help guide somebody through that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I'm taking a look at the clock right now, and I know you've got stuff to do, and I do want to make sure you have a time to breathe between your things. If somebody's listening right now, if somebody listening right now is like, "Yo, Mills, she's got what I need. I want to hang out with her." What would be the best way for somebody to get in touch with you?
You can email me, mills@millsknowsbills.com. You can also check out my website, millsknowsbills.com, or follow me on Instagram or YouTube at Mills Knows Bills.
Lots of Mills Knows Bills. You know the
Mills Knows
bills.
Bills. I know the bills.
You're too cute.
I know them.
You're just awesome. I'm excited for this friendship to grow. I see cool, fun things between us working together and helping. Like we serve very similar people, and I like that's the fun part, to be able to like help people together. It's so much more fun that way. Any words of advice, any parting thoughts you'd like to share with our listeners today?
If you are somebody who has been struggling with this whole money thing, whether it's been for an hour or 10 years, it doesn't matter. Take today to do one thing, just one thing. I promise you, it's not as scary as you might think it's going to be. Also, any quote unquote issues or problems you have with money, I guarantee it's a lot easier to solve than you're expecting to. So do one thing, and then if you have questions, reach out to me. As you can tell, I clearly love talking about this, but do one thing for yourself. Turn that anxiety into adrenaline. You can do it.
Mills, you're fantastic. I am so grateful that you just wandered into my life all of a sudden. Ben, thank you wherever you are for introducing us.
Thank you, Ben.
I love it. I'm so happy to just share some time today. Thank you. I'm just grateful for you coming and sharing your wisdom and your insight. And like I had mentioned before, or you had mentioned before, you sent me a document link thing about all those 4 different key components. That's going to be in the show notes today. All of Mill's contact information is going to be in the show notes. So everybody make sure you go check that out. Thank you again. You're fantastic. Thank you everybody for listening today. And until next time, I remind you to love everybody.